Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Here we are with another episode of NFA Live every Thursday. We have Guy from Coin Bureau. How's it going, Guy?
Good, thanks, Ben. I love the decor.
Thank you. And we have Rob from Digital Asset News. How's it going, Rob?
Good to be here. And again, I share that sentiment. It looks pretty nice back there. You did a great job, Ben, of putting that all together.
You know, it wasn't me.
I know it wasn't.
Right. Rob, has the downturn in the market been that bad that you can no longer afford the green screen?
That is the problem. I asked Fiverr for just to help me out one more week. And they're like, you know what? We have to liquidate you and no more green screens. And that's fine. That's just how it has to be.
Are you in a bathroom? It looks a lot like you're in a bathroom.
I'm in a bathroom. Yeah.
Okay.
And then because I couldn't make it, I had to shower real quick after I got back from the beach. I'm like, you know what? Let's just do it right here.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, we got a few questions to go through, so why don't we go ahead and jump in? Guy, we'll start with you. I'm curious what your thoughts are. We got the headline yesterday that the Fed had slowed quantitative tightening. Not the first time they've done it. They also did it back in May of 2024. This one seems to have captured a few more headlines, it seems. So I'm curious, though, what effects do you think that the slowing of quantitative tightening may have on markets here in at least the short to medium term?
I guess in the short term, it's. I mean, I guess that's kind of the reason why we've had a bit of a bump over the last 24 hours or so. So the market, I think, is reacting positively to it. I mean, it feels like sort of breadcrumbs in a way, doesn't it? It's sort of like, oh, here's a bit of QT, tapering off a bit just to sort of keep you interested, keep you in the game. Because I mean, as you said, they've slowed QT to what is it 5 billion a month now, down from 25. If my
but there's still about 35 billion a month rolling off from mortgage-backed securities.
Okay. So I mean, they've slowed it, but first of all, they've slowed it so they haven't ended it. And obviously, as you've pointed out many times, Ben, an end to QT is just one stepping stone. Then an end to QT, rate cuts, more rate cuts, and then I guess from a risk asset point of view, the promised land that is QE. So I mean, it's like I say, it feels like breadcrumbs. It's certainly progress, though. I mean, I don't want to sound too negative about it, because it's like it's definitely a good thing, but it doesn't seem like a huge deal, and I think that's probably reflected in the market's sort of pumped a little bit, but not spectacularly. So I think it's sort of good around the margins, not necessarily sort of mega bullish. I thought as well, though, that the tone, Powell's tone, and the tone in the SEP, the Summary of Economic Projections, that didn't seem particularly hawkish. I mean, we'll come to one of his comments in a moment, but seemed sort of relatively dovish. So I guess you could say things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think the term he used was slower for longer. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It definitely was an interesting move. I think a lot of people were hoping that QT would just outright end. But if you take him at his word, I think there's still about $2.2 trillion worth of mortgage-backed securities rolling off at around 35 billion a month. That would obviously take a long time, but again, it won't necessarily take. If you take 2.2 trillion divided by 35 billion, it won't probably take that long, because at some point, they'll balance it out potentially with expanding their balance sheet elsewhere to basically get us to like a delta neutral or something. But it still seems like that promised land is still a little ways off. Rob, do you have anything to add? What do you think about the crypto markets, given the Fed has slowed QT once again?
Well, we just saw a pump last night, didn't we? It wasn't a great thing, but I think the market is so downtrodden, that anything that is positive, they're very happy for it. So we just took a look, and it wasn't like they stopped QT, they just slowed QT. But that means that there's more liquidity. And if there's more liquidity entering the market or maintaining in the market, things are actually good. So when I take a look at that, I say, well, that's a positive thing, but it's going to have to be more for us to get back to this bull run. I watched a video you did about the bull market support band. We've fallen below that. And when we do that, we see some pretty big declines. And it's not just with Bitcoin, it's with altcoins. So when I see stuff, happening, I just think, well, this is just one part of the equation. So we have that. And then if we take a look at, federal funds rate, we know they're only going to do it twice.
You want to share your screen here?
Yeah, sorry. As far as like Fed funds rate, we're going to see twice. But that could happen in June. That could happen in the meeting after that. I don't know what's going to happen in May when they have their next meeting. But yeah, slower for longer. But the thing I want to remind everybody is that it's not just, we're taking a look at the total assets here. Just remind that the price of Bitcoin can still go up. I mean, even when it did this in 2013, 2014, when they were adding to the balance sheet, when they were flat in 2017, essentially, a little bit of sideways chop for what they would do as far as putting on their balance sheet, and when it's declined. So if we take a look at that and we say, well, is it going to be the worst thing? There's a lot of things that has to happen. And we'll get into that stuff as far as like inflation, geopolitical, the wars in Ukraine, the different outlooks for the government. And if it just comes down to the supply. And we can see here that supply, we can still go up as far as the price goes, but it takes a little bit of time. This is going back to 2022 because everybody says we got to get to quantitative easing. Well, we do, but we're still in a pretty good place. And that was just America M2 money supply. But if we look at the global money supply, this is going back into May 2024. Because I think the last time we had a reduction in quantitative tightening was around May, right? 2024?
Correct.
So if we see a reduction, and that's great, and then we see money supply being put out like what we saw here in the global M2, we went from 104 trillion to about 108 trillion in just 2 or 3 months. But it takes a little bit of time for Bitcoin to catch up. And I just think that this is one positive aspect of it, but it's going to take a lot more for us to get to where the crypto bros want to be. And I'm one of those bros. So I'm just happy right now. Accumulating because I feel like I missed some things. And I just see it as a positive in that regard.
Fair enough. And yeah, you mentioned a few things. There's like the geopolitical stuff, right? That people are talking about. There's tariffs, but the interesting thing, which leads us to our next question, is speaking of tariffs, because Powell talked about tariffs a little bit as it relates to inflation. One of the things Powell said yesterday, I'll start with you, Rob. He said that he believes his base case is that inflation is transitory. So I guess the question is, do you believe that it is? Is this, hopefully it's not a repeat of what happened, 3 to 4 years ago when I think he actually made that statement, I think in 2021, I believe. Yeah. So, here we are 4 years later and the statement's coming out again, inflation is transitory. He also talked a little bit about the goal of trying to separate non-tariff inflation from tariff inflation. But I guess the point though is like inflation is inflation, right? Who cares where it comes from? If your bills are going to go up either way. But I guess I'm curious, like, do you think inflation is transitory?
I would like it to be transitory, but I don't think per se that it is. But it's easy for us to go against Jerome and just say, this guy doesn't, he's just saying that just like everybody else says it. But from what he is saying as far as transitory, if you take a long enough time perspective, like what's the thing that we talk about as far as investing into Bitcoin? Because when you tell your family, they're like, that's trash. It just went down 20% in 2 months. How dare you recommend that to me? Take a longer time horizon. And being like transitory with inflation, when they release the numbers, he could be right, but there's been a revision for where Jerome and the Fed thinks things are going. And they predicted in December that GDP was going to be 2.1. Now they're thinking at the end of 2025 will be 1.7. Unemployment rate 4.3 to 4.4. PCE inflation 2.5 to 2.7. I'm just reading this off. Core PCE 2.5 to 2.8. So, and then federal funds rate maybe 2, hopefully. So if he thinks it's transitory, it's probably true. But the question is, how long of a time horizon is he talking about? And as far as tariff coming, even President Trump, when he was asked specifically, do you think this could lead to a recession? He's like, we shouldn't look at the markets. Meaning, usually a politician will say, that's not what's going to happen. I'm in charge. This is what's going to happen. It's going to be the best thing of all time. But he didn't say that, which spooked the markets, and down it goes. Tariff will lead to a lot of pain. But if we think that we can do that and bring manufacturing jobs back and then actually have to get goods and services, or goods itself, produced here in America, then that's what he's going to do. And it's not like I can change that. It's just the reality of the situation. So I think it's going to be a bit of a hassle for a while, and tariffs are inflationary, unless that's just how I see it.
Yeah. He actually called a reporter out at one point, because the reporter said that last time, because they were talking about it within the context of tariffs, and the reporter said, is this, basically 2021 all over again, where you say inflation is transitory and then it's really not? And Powell's like, well, the last time the tariffs were a thing, inflation actually had been transitory. I think he was talking about back in 2018 when Trump, it was sort of the tariff discussions came up, because actually Trump did the same thing in his last administration to some degree, but he just didn't do it the minute he took office. I think he waited a year, and that discussion began. So Powell kind of called him out on that and said, well, there was a time where when we had these tariffs, inflation was in fact transitory. It just wasn't transitory the last time.
Yeah, and Ben, I'll just, one more thing. I'll just ask everybody in the comments. Would you rather have Trump beat around the bush and kind of do things, or would you rather just have him get things done and just head out like the bullet he is? Because for me, I hate sideways chop. I hate when there's a laggard. And if you just do this, if it's going to suck or if it's going to be good, at least you get out of the way, because we know what you want to do. So just do it, and then we'll respond accordingly. But that's for the commenters to tell me what they think.
It kind of reminds me of the Twitter trolls, where they're like, hey, don't you remember this thing you got wrong back 4 years ago?
Yeah, that is.
I mean, if you listen to the press conference yesterday, Powell was not having it with some of those reporters. Anyways, Guy, what are your thoughts about his comments about inflation? I mean, one of the things Rob said was that the unemployment rate, they're projecting the unemployment rate to go up, to 4.3, 4.4%. If that's true, then wage inflation shouldn't really contribute to overall inflation if the unemployment rate's getting higher. So do you agree that inflation might not be as big of a problem as it was 4 years ago?
I agree to an extent, and yeah, because I think I was looking back, and yeah, as you say, like the last time, or as you said, Rob, the last time Trump was in office, he did bring in tariffs, and we did see a rise in prices, but it only went up once, and I think inflation only increased for a couple of months and then stopped. So it wasn't like they were sort of catastrophic for inflation. I mean, as far as inflation goes, I don't want to bang this drum again and again, but if it's transitory, if inflation really is transitory, then why are inflation expectations at a 30-year high? That's the thing that worries me. In terms of that, the highest they've been since 1995 or something like that, which suggests that what Powell says and what the figures say are all very well, but as we know, expectations drive inflation to a huge extent. So, as I'm kind of watching those inflation expectation figures, if they start to trend downwards, then I think you could say it's transitory. But I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. And I guess in terms of the tariffs this time around, an interesting thing was that I think when the thing with these tariffs is, especially the ones from sort of Mexico and Canada and stuff, what they often tend to do is cause supply chain issues. especially if they're general rather than specific. If you're only tariffing, one particular type of good, it's not such an issue. But if everything's been slapped with tariffs, then that means you've got to do these huge sort of customs checks, these huge border checks, that is going to really cause a lot of supply chain disruption. Because think how much extra manpower, extra time, extra money that's going to take. And it was interesting because this is kind of proved to be one of the side effects of Brexit in the UK. All imports into Britain, there were huge amounts of slowing down. That whole process got really snarled up, and I think that may well have contributed to the inflation that we saw in the UK, which is still fairly high. So, although, historically, I guess Powell says, okay, it's transitory. It was transitory last time with tariffs. Just everyone chill. But I'm still I still kind of believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Rob, did you have something?
No, I was going to say like one guy was talking about, I didn't know about that Brexit and then all the different goods that were coming in and how much it is going to actually cost the consumer. But on the bright side, unemployment rate is supposed to rise, maybe because of all the different tariffs that we're doing, all the different custom checks and border patrol that we need. Maybe that'll increase or actually decrease the unemployment rate because we'll have to hire more people. Unfortunately, those are government jobs, which is what has been propping up the entire work sector for quite some time. So as Doge eliminates those, maybe we can fill them up with actually jobs that we need.
Send everyone to work at the border.
Might have to, who knows?
No, but there is a lot of validity to like when the economy does slow down, the frothier jobs get axed, and it forces people to focus on more productive jobs for society. It's a painful process, like no one's denying that, but long term, it's a good process for the economy, even if it sucks in the short term. So yeah, and one of the questions that I'll go ahead and go to this question now because it kind of seems somewhat related is, when you do have all this uncertainty, it can lead to the frothier parts of markets getting annihilated first, right? And I think the biggest thing that we have seen over the last 2 months is the meme coin market is nowhere near as hyped up as it was just a few months ago. It feels like I don't think as many people care about it. I did see some Twitter posts yesterday where some people were saying like, oh, well, the meme coins that are still around now, they're battle hardened. They're going to come back just as strong. But I'm like, oh, crap. Here we go again. But I'm curious, what parts of the cryptoverse do you think benefit the most from all the meme coin mania? I don't want to say dying off because I don't want to offend people. I'm not talking about their meme coins, but I want to say like at least not being as, euphoric, right? If people are not as focused on meme coins, then what sector of crypto would you say that benefits the most? Guy, I'll start with you.
Well, in theory, it should benefit. You should hopefully see coins and tokens with utility, and that can be real or imagined utility. I don't think it really matters in a speculative market, but it does give those, in theory, a chance to actually catch a bid and reclaim some of the mind share. So, it would be nice to see. It would be nice to see actual projects that are trying to build something get interest. I guess my sort of counter argument to that is, and this was kind of inspired by I listened to a very interesting interview with on something called the Plain English podcast, and they were talking to a Gen Z journalist, and actually the subject of meme coins and financial nihilism came up, which is something I think that is a bit of is quite an issue with Gen Z. And it made me wonder whether, meme coins are just kind of perhaps one component of this whole expression of financial nihilism. because you've also got things like sports betting, which apparently is soaring, more general forms of gambling. You've also got things like meme stocks as well. If we go back to the GME saga. So obviously this is relevant in that it's like, well, okay, if meme coins are no longer catching a bid and no longer attracting capital, then is capital going to flow into other areas of the crypto market? And like I say, yes, in theory it should, and that's what we all want. But I just wonder whether if it's really Gen Z on the whole bidding these, who were bidding these meme coins, can we be sure that their money stays in crypto, or they don't start pumping it into something equally nihilistic, but that's outside of crypto? And obviously that opens up larger questions about financial nihilism and about Gen Z and the problems facing them, et cetera, et cetera. I hope it finds its way back into crypto, but I don't think that's guaranteed.
Well, the other question too is if they just watch their meme coins go to zero, do they even have any money left to put into other parts of the market? That's another question.
And even if they did have money left, would they have the appetite left after seeing those meme coins get absolutely shellacked? Would they be like, okay, let's go again? Or would they be like, do you know what? I'm just going to go and spend this on oat milk lattes and avocado toast or whatever it is Gen Zers are supposed to buy.
Well, I think that's a good point because, if you look at views to YouTube channels and subscribers and stuff, we haven't really seen people stick around this cycle like they did in prior cycles. And I continue to believe one of the reasons is because when they do come to the cryptoverse, they just get flooded with meme coin promotions, and then they lose their money, and then they just get somewhat disenfranchised with the cryptoverse. So they just decide to leave. Maybe they do have money, but why would they? Why, if they think the cryptoverse is nothing just but meme coins, it could be hard for them to want to stick around. So I do think that is I definitely think that's part of it, Guy, as you said. Rob, anything different to add besides what Guy said to the, with the meme coin stuff dying down a little bit, what sectors might benefit the most?
Yeah, they're going to come back. I'm going to tell you why. Because I don't know when you guys got in, but when I got in 2017 and I wrote it all the way up and all the way down, the first words out of my mouth was, "This is a scam. This cannot be sustainable, these types of gains." And then what happens, you do a little more research and you figure out what actually is a good one. So the guys that have lost in the meme coin markets are probably the same guys that have lost, the same type of people that have lost before. But you have to ask yourself, and I think they're going to ask themselves this: okay, where can I get the most amount of gains out of the risk versus reward? I don't want to do meme coins, but maybe I don't want to do bonds, or maybe I don't want to do a savings account with Wells Fargo. Maybe I'll take a look at this and go, maybe I'll get into equities. Okay, equities are okay, but maybe we get into something with real estate. Okay, real estate's okay, but these rates are pretty high, and I got to pay an amazing amount just to get into real estate. Maybe I dabble back into this. What's the best thing? It's Bitcoin. I think that people will go away just like they went away in 2022 when FTX, Celsius, Voyager, and BlockFi collapsed. And they said, that's a piece of trash scam. And then when they figured it out and go, okay, there's actually are some good products out there, they'll come back, but they'll be burnt. And then they'll be a little bit more cautious. And that's when people become like Bitcoin or top 20 maxis. Like, this is where I want to be. So yeah, they're going to go for a while, but you'll come back. You'll always come back.
You always try to sneak Bitcoin dominance in there any way you can, Rob.
Well, I talk about it constantly. Bitcoin de-energy, right? So yeah.
I think I agree with a lot of what you say, Rob. And I mean, I think I saw a headline today or yesterday. I think it's Radium on Solana is planning to build their own pump.fun clone. And you're just like, what? Like, this isn't what we need. We don't need another. That pump.fun was part of the whole fucking problem. Like, we don't need another one.
But there's money, guy. There's money to be extracted from people that are dumb and they're gamblers. They want to squeeze it out of everybody.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's like, if there's a street with a casino on it, conventional wisdom might say, well, you don't build another casino because there's already a casino. But actually, build another casino because that's where the gamblers are. So here we go. No crying in the casino part 2.
Dude, I lived in Las Vegas for 2 years. I'm telling you, casinos they're going to be winners.
Yeah.
I was actually there's some statistics that kind of follow all the gambling in Las Vegas. I think that's actually declined a little bit recently. It is not too different, I guess, from gambling and meme coins. Kind of a similar idea. There's actually a really interesting chart that I was if you look at, I'm getting off topic, but there's an interesting chart to track continuing claims in Nevada. That's a chart that I've watched for a little while. That tends to be a pretty good lead. Sort of it leads other things. I think that one leads other things, and it could be because that's Las Vegas is the furthest up the risk curve in terms of cities where I don't know. But anyways, I have another question because it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like the market's currently searching for a narrative. We already knew that March is really not a great time for crypto in post-halving years. 2017 March was pretty bad. January of 2017 was also pretty bad. The main difference between 2017 and 2025, in 2017, February was good. So the March drop led to a higher low. This time February sucked, potentially due to all the tariffs and tariff discussions. I don't know. And therefore the March drop has actually caused a lower low. So it seems like the markets are searching for a narrative, I guess. And I'm curious, what might that narrative be? I think at the end of the day, narrative follows price action, not the other way around. But we do like to assign narratives to every price movement to explain why things are happening. Some of the made headlines, the strategic Bitcoin reserve, that seems to have kind of died off a little bit. Do you think that narrative will come back later this year? Do you think there's going to be other narratives we're going to be talking about, whether it's like altcoin ETFs? I don't know. I don't know. What narrative, Rob, I'll start with you first. What's the market going to be focused on for the rest of the year? Like, what's the main narrative the market will sort of attach itself to?
Well, I mean, the strategic reserve it's going to keep playing out. And even, I think, it was Guy, you posted on Twitter, and you talked about how President Trump was going to be talking today at the summit, at the other digital asset. And of course, we hear about that and everybody gets excited. Oh, he's going to say this is going to be great. He's going to drop the capital gains to zero, and he's going to buy a million Bitcoin, and people will speculate. So we'll always have that because we'll always be baited into that by the click mongers that are out there for news, and that's just how it is. And then moving forward, I think you have to have the narrative being Bitcoin and what it can do, nation states and all that stuff. But I still do think that AI is going to be a pretty big narrative as far as things moving into different crypto projects. The question is are those crypto products, they really do things with AI, or they just say they're going to do things with AI? I know that there's an initiative right now, besides the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, it's America to become kind of like a founder or push the narrative or push the agenda that is artificial intelligence with Elon Musk, BlackRock, and a couple of their big, huge businesses to build it up in America. Because there's a race going on, I think, with those two. So you'll see that, and hopefully, like Guy said, that the memes die off because they're kind of worthless, but there'll be a couple that'll make it. I just don't know which ones those are. But that's what I think the narrative will be. And then, of course, Ethereum going home. That'll be the next narrative.
Wow, that's a really interesting theory, that last one.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it later.
What do you think, Guy? I mean, Rob brought up some good points. I mean, the whole reserve stuff will probably come back at some point. But I mean, I feel like for now it's just kind of like, technically, I guess promises kept, but at the same time they haven't bought any.
Yeah.
What do you think the next big narrative is going to be?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I think now that the sort of excitement around Trump getting into office has faded, and the strategic reserve thing, the digital asset stockpile, yada yada, that's kind of faded into the background a little bit. Yeah, it's like where do we focus now? And my initial thought was like, crypto can go back to focusing on infighting general despair and just sort of fading Ethereum. So be able to concentrate on that a bit, but. To be in more seriousness, I think, I agree with Rob. I think AI will have a comeback of some description, and again, there'll be the question of like how, is this crypto X AI thing? Is there anything in this, or is it just more vaporware, or more like this has got AI, sure. So that'll be one to watch. I kind of personally feel that I'm just not really expecting retail to be hugely involved here, because I just don't think there's anything for them at the moment, especially given everything that's happened with meme coins. And I'm just not quite sure what it is that will attract retail back. So in the absence of retail, assuming that they don't come back, or they don't come back in size anytime soon, in the absence of retail, who's going to drive crypto? And that the answer, I think, is institutions. So what are institutions going to be interested in? What sectors, what narratives, if you like, will they be looking at? And I think probably they're most interested in RWAs and stablecoins. RWAs has been talked about a lot. It's one of these things, everyone understands the potential. Everyone knows the potential. But I guess until there's clear regulation around it, until crypto companies feel comfortable offering these sorts of, not just crypto companies, of course, it's actually, banks, asset managers, etc. It's TradFi that wants to offer these tokenized real world assets. So I guess once they are confident, once they're comfortable with these sort of offerings, and that comfort can only come from regulation, that's when we'll see it. Ditto stablecoins. There is stablecoin legislation making its way through Congress. There's the Genius Act, and I think there's another one in either the House or the Senate. So we hope that we'll get regulation around stablecoins as well, and I think that could open up a lot of innovation, and that could really fire up the sort of PayFi sector, which again I think is something that crypto is a niche that crypto could fill and should probably focus on. So my guess would be, I agree with Rob on AI in some form. I think that will definitely be a big narrative again at some point. But my other bets would be RWAs and stablecoins.
Yeah, guys, you know what? I'll take my answer back with the AI. AI will be big, but Guy nailed it, because the stablecoins I think are going to be, and people won't like that because they think, well, how can I invest in stablecoins? That doesn't make any sense. But if you look at like this chart, that this was by ARK Invest, you can just see, like, if you don't think stablecoins are going to be big, this is the transaction volume by year, and that's light blue is stablecoins, and that beat MasterCard, American Express, and Visa, not combined almost, but it did. And I think you have to look at, if you're thinking about, well, why do I care about that? Just take a look at what the stablecoins are built on, which it's Tether and USD control 85% of the market. So you're looking at Aptos, Near, Tron, CeeLo, Ton, Avalanche, Solana, Optimism, Polkadot, and some other ones. So just take a look at those and make your bets that way.
I saw a funny tweet recently where it was like, someone pointed out that had you bought, some stable coins at the merge, they've outperformed Ethereum.
That's pretty good.
I think they also like cherry picked a day where like one of the stable coins like went down below 1, and then now it's like back to 1. So like technically the stable coin's up a few percent. I don't know.
Wow. There's somebody not laughing at that joke. They're like, that's not a good joke.
No, but I mean it's been a brutal cycle for Ethereum.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. But sorry, Ben, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say on the subject of stablecoins as well. They're a really good bellwether for where the market is heading. I think Nick here at Coin Bureau, he tweeted out on his account yesterday or today, I think it was, that watch out, keep an eye on stablecoin market caps, because when you see those start to climb, then you'll know there's liquidity coming back in, and that is probably one of the best measures to look at of, where to judge liquidity, obviously, but to judge where the market might be going. If those stablecoin market caps start to really climb, then there is money to be spent, and that, in theory, should be good for Bitcoin and altcoins. Whether it'll be good for ETH, who knows?
Who knows? If you guys have any questions, we're going to do one more question here. But if you guys have any questions for Guy or Rob, make sure you post those in the chat. We'll get to those in a few minutes. Last question. There's been a lot of crypto villains throughout the years. So I'm curious, is there a crypto villain that you think the industry would give a second chance to? And, could you see them going on some type of redemption arc? I feel like I feel like there have been some that have tried to force their own redemption arcs at points, and the industry basically just wasn't interested. But I am curious if there are any sort of prior crypto villains out there from, last cycle, 2 cycles ago, maybe even 3 cycles ago, that you think the industry would actually give a second chance to. Rob, what do you got?
Gary Gensler.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole post right there. Gary Gensler. So, and I've even seen tweets and posts where people are like, bring Gary Gensler back. And actually, some people were actually asking for Joe Biden to come back too.
I mean, look. I mean, we had how many presidents launched meme coins after Gensler resigned?
Exactly, and it all traces back to Gary G. I mean, he's the one. He's the president. But no, like, I can see, and I will tell you this: if any crypto project hired him on from MIT and said, you know what, we want Gary Gensler to be on our board, guaranteed everybody would be like, you know what, that's a good choice. I like Gary Gensler. And then not only that, but like to get Gary Gensler on, because he was responsible for like Choke Point, part of it, and then he could actually say it's like that movie Catch Me If You Can. The main character, Leonardo DiCaprio, he was responsible for theft and forgery, and the FBI brought him on and said, how do you combat that? That's when Gary comes over and was like, oh, then that's when you see Gary memes and T-shirts come out, and that'll be awesome.
No, I've already.
Turns out he was protecting us all along.
See, protect us harder, Gary, and we were the ones that let it go. Oh, we're so stupid.
No, but we talked about this last year, that like January 20th could be kind of a risk-off period for a while because of the pricing in of like what people perceive as perfection. With Gary Gensler resigning and a strategic Bitcoin reserve coming and all this deregulation. And it turns out the strategic Bitcoin reserve so far has just been, we're just going to keep the Bitcoin we have. And deregulation just meant that people, influencers and presidents were going to launch their own meme coins. So it kind of is like, it was almost, the market was ahead of I think what people were actually kind of realizing there. But Guy, and by the way, guys, remember, if you have questions in the description or in the comments below, and we'll try to get to those in just a moment. Guy, who would you pick as a potential villain that might have a redemption arc?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Gary Gensler didn't cross my mind, but it's a brilliant answer. I mean, it's difficult. I guess in a way, like as I think we talked about it last week or the week before, like Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, hear me out. Sam Bankman-Fried is already working.
Man, I'm walking out.
This ought to be good. This ought to be good.
Just hang with me here, guys. Sam Bankman-Fried is already working on his redemption arc. We had that interview with Tucker Carlson, which to me just smacked of the first stage of hey, I'm not so bad. And like, but obviously this guy is you would assume going to be in prison for quite a long time. But I can already see it, and the reason I can see it is because I think crypto is one of these places where, do you know what? Someone worse will come along. Someone even worse than Sam Bankman-Fried will come along, and people will go, do you know what? That guy, he wasn't so bad. He wasn't so bad, like, compared to whichever monster has taken us lower or torched whatever, it'll be like, yeah, God, do you remember the good old days? Do you remember the good old days where when our villains weren't really as villainous as they are today? So, I mean, that's why I kind of think we shouldn't rule out redemption arcs, even for the likes of Sam Bankman-Fried. It's interesting though, because I think it is quite easy in a way to get a second chance in this game, because like and we saw it with the Three Arrows Capital guys, Suzu and Kyle Davis. Those guys. Okay, now look, there's nuance here because I don't, technically I don't think they're accused of any crimes or whatever, but they certainly, that hedge fund blew up and a lot of people lost a lot of money. What did they do? They kind of went dark. They went quiet for a while. And then they just popped up again, and they're out there. They've got another. I think they've got some other project on the go, which I don't really care. It's not something I'd be involved with. But they basically set their own redemption arcs in. I just started tweeting like, "Oh yeah, we're back. Yeah, we're back." Mm-hmm. And I think, this seems to be, there seems to be some sort of tolerance for that in this industry. Obviously, people have long memories and they won't necessarily forget. But I think when you combine that with the fact that it is, the fact that it's possible to sort of be like, I did a boo-boo. Okay, I'm going to be very quiet. I'm just going to, I'm going to disappear, let it ride for a few weeks, months or whatever. And then it's just like, right, I'm back and just pretending as though nothing happened. That seems to be a trope in crypto. And when you combine that with the fact that, like I said earlier, just wait up and someone will come and eclipse you in the bad guy stakes soon enough, and all of a sudden you'll seem like a saint, and boom, you're back. So like I don't think you can rule anyone out. They'll be back because people will get nostalgic for the days. It's like, it's like, I think they always say, like, the villains were better, and villains were better in the old days. They always say like the old Bond villains were the best ones.
Yeah. It sounds like what you're suggesting is it's the relative valuation of a villain against another villain.
Right.
Exactly.
So it is. The relative valuation.
Speaking of the relative valuations of altcoins against Bitcoin.
So you see what he did there? You see what Ben did there? Look at that.
It was a trap. It was a trap. He led us into it. He knew we were going to
dominance trap. Damn it.
Someone said, I just posted, I don't know where it is now, but they said that that Bitcoin dominance has been the villain this cycle.
if you aren't into Bitcoin, it definitely has been. If you've been in altcoins, you're like, why is everything, all liquidity go this? It's awful. Yeah, Guy, I like your answer, but like I was listening to, I was like, Guy's just describing the best piece of trash out of all the trash out there. That's who we're rooting for. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it gives me no pleasure, Rob. It gives me no pleasure. It really doesn't. But like I can just kind of see it. I think I say people have long memories, but only only up to a point. And then there'll be a new generation of people into crypto, and they'll be like, oh, he was the guy who blew up FTX. Yeah, I don't really remember that. That was before my time. It's like, well, he doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah,
we'll be all there. Us granddads will be there like, no, he was the Antichrist. Don't bring him back in.
Yeah, people who hated Jay Clayton. Jay Clayton's the worst of all time, but this guy Gary coming in, he looks like he can do everything. And now here we are.
Yeah.
All right. We have some questions. If we can tear ourselves away from laughing about ETH Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance for a moment, let's go through some of these questions. All right. Let me see. Here's one. We kind of get this one every once in a while, but I don't know if you guys have a new take on. Any thoughts on the hackability of Bitcoin will be vulnerable to quantum computing? feel like people have been asking me this since like 2017. You guys have any different insights than anything we previously said?
I mean, one thing I said was if we have quantum computer hacking or getting into Bitcoin and doing double spends and everything else, I think we got a lot more things to worry about, like every single bank account that's out there and all personal information. And then all, of course, the nuclear security codes. So I think that when that comes about, we got bigger fish to fry. And hopefully, but isn't there some quantum resistant chains that people talk about? I know people are screaming at their screen right now.
Yeah. There were a few. I think someone mentioned quantum computing. Some big figure. I don't think it was the NVIDIA guy, or maybe it was. But quantum computing got a mention in the general discourse just the other day, and a few quantum resistant cryptos pumped off the back of that.
Yeah.
So there are quantum resistant cryptos out there. Others have sort of become quantum resistant. I think Algorand had an upgrade that made it quantum resistant 2 or 3 years ago. But I mean, in terms of Bitcoin, it's something that, and quantum resistance, it's something that everyone's aware of. But every time it gets brought up, everyone always says, well, that's 15 to 20 years in the future. And as you rightly say, Rob, way bigger things to worry about if that does happen. But I kind of think it's like, I wonder whether there'll be a ChatGPT moment for quantum computing, where suddenly it becomes real. Because up until ChatGPT, everyone was like, oh yeah, AI, I hear that's could be a thing one day or whatever. And then suddenly it's on your computer. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. So quantum computing, I don't think we've had that yet. Google unveiled some fancy chip a couple of months ago, didn't they? That sort of got everyone talking about it again. But I guess at some point, someone, maybe the Chinese, will drop a working or a quantum computer that is way, way more advanced than anyone imagined it would be at that stage. And it'll be a real sort of, oh shit, okay. And that is where you don't want to get caught out in that, because I think Bitcoin development, or people in the Bitcoin community and other crypto communities are like, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we. I spoke to someone who actually spoke to Adam Back about this. Adam Back, OG Bitcoin, and Adam Back, he quoted Adam Back as saying, "Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." And it was like, okay, well, what if that bridge comes to you a lot quicker than you imagine? So that's that's a long answer to a short question.
Someone says a quantum computer that could hack Bitcoin encryption could also hack stock exchange, power grid, nuclear. I mean, yeah. I think you guys are right that you probably have bigger things to worry about at that point. But
hopefully somebody figures it out.
Maybe that computer gives us fusion.
That's also, that would be free energy. We'll take it.
All right,
we just get everything all at the same time.
Here's actually a really good question. Here's a good question. Wait, where'd it go? All right, so this person says they're just now getting into the market, March of 2025. What is your argument in favor of buying Bitcoin versus alts? Rob, this seems like a good question for you to get out your little spiel that you normally like to get out.
I do have a spiel. And the spiel is, so first of all, there is really it all depends on what you want to do. And of course, this show is not financial advice, right? But the spiel would be, well, the altcoins are down, you can make bigger gains, and you can take a look at the risk levels on Ben's website, steal the information like I do, and then just kind of, play it out like that. The problem with that is that we don't know how far alts are going to go down. So if you keep dollar cost averaging down, it's a problem. But with Bitcoin over time, you never lost if you have a 4-year time horizon at minimum. So if you take a look at modern portfolio theory, which you can find that on the site, you can take a look and say, well, it's not a bad idea to have a mix of, say, Bitcoin, which is the most stable in the most unstable market, and get into that. And then if you want to dabble into altcoins, you can. Top 20, 10% or so, and then maybe below the 20 to 1,000 at 5% for those knockoff gains. But for me, when I'm telling my family what to invest into, and I have 2 hard-headed brothers, I just say like, look, if you get into Bitcoin, it's going to be, just give it 4 years and it'll be fine. But if I tell them to do like that with Ethereum, if I did that over like the last 3 years, they would have said, hey, we could have gotten to stable coins. We would have been much better off. So for me, I just tell them right now, there is an argument that the gains are greater for altcoins. The other argument is, which one is it? And which one is going to have a Luna moment? And which one is going to collapse? And which one is going to be the Ethereum, which is, it has everything going for it. I mean, it has a large community. It's supposed to be deflationary. I think that's actually changed right now. It has a mass amount of TVL, and yet the price is almost a stable coin, just flat and doing nothing or going down. So for me, when alts, I can get into them, but I have money to lose. So that's where I stand.
I think, yeah, like I think one of the biggest arguments people make is that they said that alts outperform Bitcoin in a bull market, and they did in QE in 2020 and 2021. But this cycle so far has been completely different in terms of the the monetary policy that we're sort of experiencing. And I think a lot of people in 2022 would have said that Ethereum would definitely, it's only obvious in hindsight for a lot of people, right? And 3 years ago, it would have seemed obvious to many people that Ethereum would outperform Bitcoin, but it clearly has not been the case. And in fact, we've seen ETH Bitcoin bleed for like the last 3.5 years. So it's just a good reminder that it's only obvious in hindsight for a lot of these altcoins, like which ones are actually going to do well. There's a kind of a sobering fact about Ethereum and Bitcoin. Basically, the price of Ethereum was essentially the same as it is right now, like 3 years ago, or back in 2022. Like around the merge, the price of ETH was around $2,000, but the price of Bitcoin at the time was like $25,000 or something. So now you have Bitcoin at $85,000 and ETH is at the same price, and that's sort of the brutality of the altcoin market sometimes. But one person actually asked a kind of interesting question. Well, it's kind of a dumb question, but I kind of want to change the question that they asked. Well, could any alt flip Bitcoin? Okay, so it's not a dumb question, but it's not a dumb question, but it's kind of a dumb question.
Well, I mean, we laugh at it until it actually happens. Who knows?
Exactly.
It could happen. Yeah.
It's probably not a relevant question in any short-term capacity, right? Like, we can't know what's going to happen in like 10 years, right? But in the short term, it's almost surely not happening. But I'd like to change the question. Could any alt flip Ethereum? That's kind of the question I wanted to ask, because, Bitcoin has been number one forever, right? And so it's easy to assume that a question like this is dumb, but in reality, I guess it's not completely if we look out far enough. I don't know. Who knows what happens in 100 years? But Ethereum has not always been number two. Do you think it'll hold on to that number two spot, or is it at risk of being flipped by an altcoin?
That's a guy question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely at risk of being flipped by an altcoin, 100%. And it does, yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because like 2 or 3 years ago, that would have been a dumb question. And it's not now. Yeah. It could get flipped by USDT. If stable coins become as massive and as all pervading as many seem to think they will be, it could just get flipped by a stable coin. It could get flipped by something like Solana. That basically does what Ethereum does, but cheaper and faster. Leave aside questions of decentralization, all that sort of stuff. Most people don't care about that, So it could very easily do that. And of course, Ethereum doesn't help itself by having this fragmented layer 2 ecosystem, et cetera, that we've all talked about before. But yeah, 100% an alt could flip ETH. Maybe even this year if Ethereum's sort of troubles continue. But at the same time, I do feel that like Ethereum it is still possible for Ethereum to right itself and gain lots of institutional adoption. Say, going back to this question of RWAs, So it's 50-50, but 100% it's possible. Yeah.
It is kind of interesting because you're right. I mean, like, a few years ago, that would have been considered a dumb question for any alt flipping ETH. And I guess more people are coming around to that idea than they would have a few years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess there's no such thing as dumb questions in the cryptoverse. Rob, this question's for you because I know you follow this a bit closer than I think Guy or I. Someone says, if you look at Trueflation data, which has always been accurate and front run CPI by about 45 days and has been drastically falling, how can Powell say that inflation is rising, going to rise? First of all, I think Powell was pretty clear that he thinks inflation is transitory, so I don't think he thinks it really is going to rise that much. But I guess there's a question within the question of, is the inflation data coming out from Trueflation, is it to be believable? Because if it is, I think this person's right. I think it's been dropping off a cliff recently.
Yeah, it has. And we have to understand like where does Trueflation get their data? And it's supposed to be an API integration into numerous sources, not just looking at retrospective data that the Fed takes a look at, but API data as it comes in. And that could be from it's like over 200 different sources that they pull in constantly. And it takes a look and says, well, now we think, and I tried to pull up the website, but for some reason it's down. Maybe it's my computer. But I think we were at like the inflation rate was below 2% already. So the question was always asking, well, if it's below 2%, why does Jerome think that, inflation is actually slowing down? But this is the data we have. And I think it just comes down to the fact of they have more data that is updated, that is like real time, and the Fed takes a look at retrospective data. Is that the total truth that's out there? Well, let me ask everybody else that isn't in the video right now. Do you feel like inflation is coming down adequately enough? Do you feel like your prices are just fine? Do you take a look at eggs is a big thing. How's your rent doing? How much you have to pay for insurance? How much is your car? And how much, if you're taking a look at new cars, do you think it's been like way too high priced as opposed to like 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago? I take a look at that and say, but I'm different. I'm in Puerto Rico. Everything's expensive here because everything is imported and we have to pay those import tax. But to answer the question, that was it. Trueflation just gets faster data. The Fed takes a look at it. And in the grand scheme of things, who are we going to listen to as far as like the markets? Is it going to be the Trueflation data? It's good to know where we're going, but are we going to listen to Jerome Powell, what he says? Right now, it's Jerome Powell, what he says. Trueflation says we're in the right direction. That's just that's it.
Yeah, honestly, we have a lot of good questions, but we are running out of time. Maybe one last one, and then we'll run. This person says, "What about the effects of M2? We talk a lot about QE, and by the way, we're still not in QE. Powell said that QE is not going to happen until interest rates are back at zero. I don't really think that that's coming back anytime soon. And we talk about its effects on liquidity, like off Bitcoin pairs." But the other side of it is M2 rising. If you look at like an estimation of global money supply, there seems to be some correlation between Bitcoin and M2. Do you guys agree with that? Is there just a lag between money supply and Bitcoin? Could that correlation break down? What are your thoughts? Do you guys have any thoughts on this question?
I'll just say real quick. I take that chart I showed up, the M2 global money supply. You can see there's a difference. It's either like plus 44 or plus 77 days past when the M2 global goes up to where Bitcoin will go up. But then it's not perfectly correlated. So but that's all I've seen so far. And we just had a big spike. So maybe in 44 to 77 days, we see Bitcoin go up, but it depends.
I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. We're at the top of the hour. Been going for an hour. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Guys, if you're not subscribed to Guy or Rob, link to both of their channels in the description below. So make sure you guys do that. Next week, we're going to be on Rob's channel. So make sure you guys tune in for that over on Digital Asset News. Pleasure to see you guys again here. And we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.